Hi, this is Jeff Ferris. A few days ago, I got to chat with Greg Douglas, who leads a global team at Accenture focused on helping the Fortune 2000 transform their IT. Turns out that Greg has a lot of great insights that will help MSPs transform their own clients. As you'll hear in the recording, my audio could have been better, but Greg's fortunately is awesome, and he has a lot of great insights that you just don't want to miss. So now here's Greg and the interview. Thanks.
Hello and welcome. I'm Jeff Ferris, President and CEO of Cloud Radio. I'm here today with Greg Douglas. He's the global lead of technology and strategy and advisory at Accenture. Welcome, Greg.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. Thanks for having me.
So as global lead, again, I'm just reading off of the site, but as a global lead for Accenture's technology strategy and advisory practice, Greg leads teams that guide clients on their technology-powered business transformation journey. Now, I have that right?
You've got it right. And, only a consultant could come up with those buzzword bingo like that to make it sound impressive, right? So
I know. I liked all of those. Yeah, I think you got every word in there.
Yeah, I've got a good marketing team, that's for sure.
I know. Well, again, it is a broad mission, but it's also a broad challenge, and I think that's why clients engage with Accenture.
That's right.
Greg and I met through a mutual friend, and as we chatted, Greg's work at Accenture really resonated with me because it was basically just a part of the spectrum of the MSP experience. A little more maybe on the higher end side. Greg's may not be installing software on individual workstations, but he is working with business owners, business CEOs, and executive teams to lead the charge for technology transformation in those organizations. So I thought a discussion with Greg would be really fascinating and a benefit to the MSP community at large. So Greg, as we get into this, I'd like to learn a little bit more about how you even ended up on this path, because I was looking at your profile as we were talking. You started off life as an electrical engineer, right? So
that's right.
How did you get to lead a global practice at Accenture, right? How does that happen?
Well, Jeff, if I had my real dreams come true, I would have been a professional soccer player. But that was not in the cards. I loved soccer and played soccer at University of Texas, and then I was also an electrical engineering major. And my father, in his wisdom, had always said, you know what, if you become a double E, there will always be some job for you somewhere. And so I was enamored with Andersen Consulting at the time, the predecessor to Accenture. And these individuals who came down and were talking about technology when they came to recruit, but they also talked about the business side of the house and what was going on inside of the organization from a finance, sales, operations perspective. And that really appealed to me. And so I joined Andersen Consulting to explore that. And the very first assignment, Jeff, I was given was to go work for this startup telecom company called MCI. Now, little did we know where they would end up one day.
Right.
And they were building out a nationwide, in what we would call today, broadband network and long distance network. And at the time, I was really disappointed because I didn't want to go work in the telecom industry. I wanted to go work in airlines or something that I thought would be a sexier environment. But what I learned is as soon as I got there, I really succeeded and excelled because my engineering background, my electrical engineering background, was actually directly applicable to networks. And in that case, telecom networks, and all of the lessons you learn between your schooling and your education and the labs we did directly applicable to network provisioning and network operations. And so I immediately became enamored with the telco industry. And I've spent really the last 30 plus years of my career working in communications, media, high tech, software platforms, internet spaces, as an industry focus for me. So that's how a double E from UT ends up working in the consulting space, having a passion for business, a passion for technology, and a little bit of dumb luck in terms of your client.
Okay. Yeah, and again, MCI was quite a ride. Were you working as in your role there, were you working on the engineering problems of that rollout, or were you working on the business challenges?
We were actually doing the system side of it. So we were building their billing support systems and operation support systems. So network provisioning, network engineering, tracking facilities that they were building out, where those facilities were. And then, as you say, we start to get into the IT side of building out their customer-facing systems as well, as they started to onboard millions and millions of long distance, which is an antiquated term now, long distance customers. Yeah.
So were you guys actually writing code for MCI?
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Okay.
I'm ashamed to say that some of my COBOL code and maybe even a few JCL programs that I wrote to compile that COBOL code probably still sit somewhere on a server in Verizon, who ultimately acquired the MCI assets.
Yeah, for younger MSPs, this will of course require a Google search for the word COBOL. So COBOL, just if you're looking for
JCL,
it, right? So,
right? So yeah,
yeah, JCL too, right? So, so as you go in there, you're scoping the requirements for MCI. You're helping to write the code, and so is it fair to say that at the end, I mean, they have a problem, you come in and you fix the problem,
right,
with a solution delivered at the end, as opposed to like a recommendation? You're actually delivering the solution turnkey. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. And that's been the backbone of Accenture's business to come full circle here, is that, you know, what we've learned early on in our careers and also in building this business here at Accenture is that clients want advice, they want counsel, but they also want execution. And they want an organization that will guarantee that the architect or blueprint that they created actually gets implemented correctly. My analogy is always that sometimes you hire an architect to build you a set of blueprints for your new house, but then you go out and completely engage and hire a separate construction company. And sometimes that construction company starts on the blueprints and says, well, wait a minute, we can't actually build to what these guys designed over here. And I'm sorry, there's going to be an upcharge or an overrun or whatever, and you're frustrated. We saw the advantage of putting those two capabilities in-house, doing the design, doing the advice, doing the consulting up front, and then doing the execution. And even today, that's part of our business. We really have three key parts of our business. We have strategy and consulting, where I sit, where we advise clients on their technology decisions and help them set a vision for their technology and an enterprise architecture for their technology. And then we have an execution arm, our technology group, systems integration practice. And then we have an operations group that actually runs on an ongoing basis the technology and the operations and the systems and processes that we put in place. So we're really a full service provider to clients from soup to nuts, idea to execution.
Including the running, right? So again, if you do a project, again, from an MSP perspective, it basically generates ongoing revenue.
Right.
So once you do the project well, you've got their buy-in and you've got that long-term client that again becomes additive to Accenture's profits and long-term vision, right?
Yeah, and it's become much different in the cloud space, as I'm sure you and the listeners here on this webinar will understand, is that in the old days of software engineering, there was a lot of code to maintain, and we did the classic. We would do bug fixes and maintenance, and we would do upgrades and things like that to software programs. And some of that still exists to a certain extent, but in the cloud world, it's a whole different dynamic. Obviously, so much of the applications who have been ported to the cloud. The work that we do for them now is much less around writing code and maintaining code and more about optimizing the infrastructure. And we'll talk a little bit about that today, I think, in terms of clients. They don't need help moving to the cloud as much anymore as they need help optimizing the cloud that they have provisioned or procured from an MSP or from one of the major providers today. That's where a lot of the action is today. I'm on the cloud, or 50% of my estate is on the cloud. How do I optimize and make sure I'm spending wisely, make sure my staff, my team, my users are using those assets wisely? And how do I make sure that the software that I am using is being optimized to run on that infrastructure? So the word of the day is optimization for sure.
So how do you find the talent? Because again, you're talking about it. I assume it's not all just Azure or just AWS. I assume you're seeing a variety of different things. How do you staff the talent? How do you keep a constant stream of new talent coming into Accenture who have those skills when the technologies are changing so rapidly?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we're over 700,000 employees. One of the most impressive statistics that I sometimes I can't believe it happens is that we hire over 10,000 people a month. in our company.
Okay.
So between attrition, that's natural attrition, and growth and everything, we hire 10,000 people a month.
Wow.
So, a couple hundred people a day somewhere in the world. And so the great question, where do we find the talent? So obviously, we continue to hire people from an engineering background out of school. That is somewhat still a consulting model. But really, we attract people from all over the world. Being a global business, we attract people who are digital nomads. So we actually have people working in over 100 countries who are associated with Accenture now. And they may be 30 people working in San Jose, Costa Rica, right? But they are connected. They're part of the Accenture brand. They go through our training. They're certified to do whatever it is they do. So we've really had to look globally, number one. Number two, we have a very robust internal education curriculum. So in partnership with Azure, AWS, GCP, whatever, or the SaaS software providers, we have a very robust training curriculum that gives our people early access to upcoming technologies, so that they can get smart ahead of the curve, right? The last thing that they want is they want to roll this stuff out, and then it takes the consultant 6 months to get smart on it. There's that lag. And so we actually get early access to what they're doing, so we can train our people early on that and get them educated. And the type of people, quite frankly, Jeff, that we tend to hire are those who thirst for change, right? They want to learn new things. They love to come here because they know they'll be learning the latest wave of technology that's coming out, and we'll provide them access to do that. We have a world-class training organization to keep their skills fresh.
Got it. And do you find, like, with the recruits today, do they tend to skew younger, older? Do they tend to be, to find these talents, do you find them fresh out of school and train them, or do you find them seasoned and draw on that?
What's been interesting the last couple of years about the proliferation of online free training on YouTube or whatever it might be, is that I'm seeing more and more people that maybe 15 years ago would have been, quote, too old to be relevant, right? If you were 50 years old and still in the IT world 15 years ago, you were kind of viewed as, oh, you're past your prime, you don't know anything anymore, and we're going to hire the younger talent. Today, that's not the case. We see people that are relevant at 23 or 22, and we see people that are relevant at 52 or 62, because they are pushing themselves to learn new things. And there's so much access to training, either free training or training provided by MSPs or provided by the cloud providers, et cetera, that they can actually get smart quickly. And so it's opened up the aperture for the type of people that we can hire, much more so than in the past. Gone are the days where you had to be the 20-something, 30-something developer, engineer, coder in order to get a job. Now it's a level playing field.
It's really fascinating to me because, again, 30 years ago, 20 years ago, especially when, the rush was on just a great, massive, large, or lots of lines of code, for example, you needed the 20-somethings and 30-somethings because they could work the 60, 80-hour weeks, right, to write voluminous amounts of stuff. But as one of the trends that I've seen is that shift from labor to intellectual property, right, to smartness. Right. And so now it's not necessarily how long you can work, but how smart you can work. Yep. And again, I think that does level the playing field between older workers who maybe can't, I'm past working 80-hour weeks. And there was a time I could do it. I can't do it now. But I also find that you don't have to do that, because sometimes it's about working smarter, and the technology certainly facilitate that. So,
and we have a lot of tools today to really facilitate doing what you just said, right? So there's a lot of code augmentation and code assistance and things like that really they're extraction layers to actually writing code. Now, look, at the end of the day, we always say you can't do too much of that. You still have to have core architects, enterprise architects, solution architects who understand exactly what is being developed and how it's being developed. But a lot of the engineering functions around that, they're being abstracted to software tools that allow people to navigate those software tools more easily. They sort of take the complexity out of it, allow them to do the work they need to get done. And then the software itself does the work to do the engineering, the coding, et cetera, that happens. So all of the major cloud providers have those tools. today in place. Some of them are good, some of them need some work. But that's where the world is heading, right? That there's going to be a gamut of skill sets that you need there, but there will always be a need for hardcore core engineers, developers, and architects. But there's a world coming more so where the abstraction layers are there for people who understand what's going on, but maybe don't have the core skills.
Got it. And to relate this back to the MSP world, I mean, again, you've seen kind of a shift in skills, a focus on intellectual property smarts, being able to know how to put the tools together. And I think the MSPs are going to see those same challenges going forward as they've gone from basically being able to answer basic tickets, software setup, endpoint setup, security type things into broader business type issues. So again, that leveling up of skills that you're seeing is probably just an indicator of things to come at the MSP world. So
yeah,
I want to shift gears just a little bit. And so now we understand kind of the team you're building to go approach the problem. Let's go talk about some of the problems, some of the more fun things. So who are you working with? I mean, the types of roles that you're working with in the companies that you serve. I mean, where does Accenture interact inside those organizations?
Well, we predominantly serve the global 2000, but we certainly have our share of upper middle market clients as well. And then in terms of the executives themselves, we almost always start in the C-suite. It could be any of the C-suite functions: COO, CFO, Chief Sales Officer, CEO, CTO, CIO, CDO. Any of those functions, those are critical relationships for us. And in fact, if we don't have those relationships, we probably don't do a lot of business there, or we probably won't start to do business there, right? So we aim to go right into the top of the organization. And first thing we're after at Accenture, and myself personally, is not understanding the technology footprint, not trying to sell them something, trying to understand their industry, understand what their competitors are doing, understand their personal pain points from an operations, finance, business standpoint, and then working with them to solve that problem. So we try to bring a holistic view to it, not just a technology view to it. And then if technology is the answer in terms of what they need to do or the challenges they need to tackle, then obviously we go in to work with them on the technology. What I would say to your MSP colleagues today is that the world is becoming massively complex for CIOs and CTOs. There have never been more tools, more data, more pressure, more concern about cyber risk being thrown at a CTO, CIO. The days of being able to have your 3 data centers and your application architecture, and all you got to do is manage your tickets and you're good and keep everything running at a 99, 5 nines, you're good. Those days are long gone. And it's very, very complex. And we see a lot of vendors come in to sell to the IT organization, the technology organization, and they're selling their widget, they're selling their solutions, they're selling maybe in a portfolio of solutions, but the context of which that fits, they don't do a good job of articulating, because many times that they don't succeed, they don't realize that they've just brought one more widget on a pile of widgets that they already can't understand what they have to begin with, right? So decomplexifying what you do and articulating how your solution or solutions fit in the broader ecosystem is a must-have. And then also showing the ease of implementation or ease of ability to integrate that into the environment is critical too. I just can't tell you that enough. I mean, I see some great software solutions. I see some great package solutions that people want to bring to clients today. And when you go to see, okay, how does this fit in their architecture? It looks too hard. And the CTO says, you know, it may be great idea, but I'm too busy. We've got too many things on our plate. I can't do it. Sorry, no, thank you. Even though in and of itself, that widget might be quite interesting, whatever it is you're selling, right? So right. Understanding the broader context of what you're doing, both in terms of the business outcomes you're trying to drive with whatever solution the MSP is positioning, as well as how it fits in the broader technology footprint, is just a must-have conversation today. And you need to lead with that.
Is it fair to say when you go in and you get those first few meetings that you're in there really to listen and not really to present?
Yeah. My favorite consulting saying is that the most important thing I can do in a room is be the second smartest person in the room. And people say that, and they sort of like, well, what do you mean? Why would they hire you if you're the second smartest person in the room, right? Well, the answer is that the client is the smartest person in the room, right? And needs to be. And so this mindset of I'm there less to tell you all the great things I know and who I am and how I can fix your problem. The first thing you want to do is listen. And when they bring up an objection or a concern, or they're worried about something, the answer isn't always to jump on it and try to solve it immediately for them. The answer is to absorb it and put it in context. And so we do a lot of training and education on our people, Jeff, on how to have those first couple of client conversations and how to be the second smartest person in the room, where a client feels like, you know what? I've had a few conversations with Jeff. He's listened to me. I think he really understands what's driving me personally, what my personal KPIs are, what I'm trying to do with my business, what our bigger issues are. And when he came to me after the third meeting with some ideas on how to maybe solve it, they were in the right context of what I'm trying to do, right? And he wasn't just there to sell me his widget or whatever the solution he or she may have. So that is a key. It's selling 101 in many ways, right? But I always have to remind technology salespeople in particular that you do not need to be the smartest and should not be the smartest person in the room. At least not act that way.
Yeah.
You might be,
absolutely,
but you should not act that way, right? So
correct, right. And I think some of it too, as you get to that sales phase, so you make that shift from listening, absorbing, understanding, and then when you go to present back, do you find that you get technical in that presentation? Or are you basically painting a vision for what that outcome is going to be?
You said the word, you took the word right out of my mouth, which is outcome, right? I believe that we're in the business of selling outcomes. We don't sell people. We don't sell technology. We don't sell solutions. We don't sell cloud computing. We sell outcomes. And that's what the client wants to hear. And they understand that an outcome may be a combination of all those things I just mentioned to deliver that outcome. And so contractually, clients today are looking for us to contract around an outcome. Not a KPI per se, but a series of outcomes. Right. So look, if you're going to do this and you're going to implement this piece of technology for me, then the outcome I expect is lower response time, better reaction to the market, faster trouble ticket creation. Selling those outcomes and committing to those outcomes is the way to go. And that we are coaching CIOs and CTOs who buy technology solutions from MSPs. We are coaching them and their procurement organizations to be much more outcome focused in their contracts than ever before. So don't buy usage, don't buy consumption, don't buy SaaS licenses, buy an outcome and let the provider decide how to achieve that outcome. Of course, you'll look under the covers if you're the buyer, but let them decide how to do it, but commit them to the outcome.
Yeah, if you look at the billing models now with Azure, AWS, and so many of the SaaS tools out there, they are usage-based, right? They are based on consumption, and that's what they're sold on because that's the way they're provisioned. But when you're the consultant, when you're the layer that's supposed to bring that technology together, right? Now it's not a usage issue, it's an outcomes issue. And I think that's exactly the right approach. And it is one of those things and I think it also probably varies based on the role. I mean, I would assume if you're lower in the organization, they could get down in the weeds and they can look at specific, lesser elements since they just want usage, for example. But at the higher levels, they don't have time to get into those needs, and they're just looking for somebody to take that load off of them and give them a better direction. Is that fair?
Even at the lower levels, even at the lower levels, at a director or senior manager in the technology organization, they're looking for outcomes too. And you could, as an MSP, you can sell an outcome, right? You can sell an outcome of, I'm going to make you X% more efficient in your consumption model than you are today. That's an outcome, right? So I'm going to allow you to do the same thing you're doing today, but at 85% a run rate than you were before, because I'm going to make you 15% more efficient because I have software that'll allow you to do X, Y, and Z. And we'll see those consumption patterns coming in. And by the way, that server that's running every, for a minute every hour, we can take that down to 30 seconds every hour. Or we don't need these servers over here to be running these workloads. We can, reduce those. And the number one conversation today is about efficiency. CFOs are pounding on the CIOs and CTOs who had massive IT spend. You know, they went from being able to manage a CapEx spend and an OpEx spend, and they were 2 or 3% growth a year. And now the model is thrown up in the air. There's not much CapEx anymore. It's all variabilized. It's all OpEx, all this consumption. And CIOs and CTOs are going to the finance organization saying, yeah, we're up 20%, and the CFO is saying, what am I getting for that? What value am I getting? How are you being efficient in your utilization of resources? And so our hottest practice, the hottest practice I have in my global business right now is the technology business management technology value practice, where we come in and we help technology organizations figure out how to get more miles per gallon out of $1 of spend than they were getting before, right? So don't just accept the fact that your consumption costs are going up 20% a year, every year. CFOs aren't tolerating that in this financial and economic environment. They're pushing back and saying, you've got to figure out how to do 20% more, but with the same budget. Okay. So how do I do that? And there are tools to do that. There are processes to put in place. There's better training of people. There's things, implementing Agile and DevOps for clients so they can collaborate more closely together and understand business, how the business needs tie back to the consumption models more tightly. So that is a huge discussion. The number one discussion we have today is technology value. What am I getting for the dollars I'm spending? How do I show that value and those outcomes for the dollars I'm spending? And how do I become more efficient in my organization? So again, if I'm an MSP, I better be having that. I better be selling under that vernacular. I better be selling a efficiency play, an outcome-based play, and understanding that a client is looking to constrain spend overall, not grow spend. And how does whatever I'm pitching to them help them achieve that benefit, right? So even at the director level, senior manager director, that's where it's getting pushed down to. And if you walk in with I can help you do outcome X for 15% less than you were doing for Y, that's a sales message that'll resonate in today's market.
Yeah, I use way too many analogies in my life, but I'm struck by, again, if you're at almost any organization now, if you don't fully understand every switch and dial that can be turned to drive efficiency, what you do understand is the outcome. And that's a concept that, again, I want this. I don't know how to get that, but if you can help me deliver it, I'm satisfied. And I think about if you ask for a yard service to deliver you a nice looking yard, you really don't know the brands of fertilizer, the watering cycle, which type of mowers to use, or any of that stuff. You just want a nice looking yard because that's the only thing you can really get time or that you can understand. And I think for a lot of these executives, again, as things get so complex, the idea of again, working on staying on their terminologies, on their frameworks, creates that value opportunity for Accenture or for anybody else that's in that technology space.
But let's use your example there for a minute. You mentioned the outcome is a great looking yard, and you want to hire somebody that produces that. If I'm your landscaper and I say, Jeff, I'm going to deliver you a great looking yard, and I go out and all I do is water your grass every day for 3 hours and it's luscious green. And then you turn around and say, Greg, I paid you $100. My yard looks great. And then you get your water bill and it's $2,000 a month. You're going to say, well, wait a minute. You delivered me an outcome that I wanted and I only paid you this, but overall my total expenses have now gone through the roof. You didn't really help me. You didn't do what you promised. You delivered an outcome and you said you were only going to charge this much, but you cost me money in other parts of the organization. Right. And again, an MSP and somebody's delivering a solution, you can't just come in with, well, here's why my piece is cheaper or better. It's how does my piece be cheaper, better, faster, and how does it contribute to lowering the overall cost and increasing the efficiency of the broader organization? So it's a great analogy.
That's a great point. Yeah, it's a great point. Right. It's a great point. Yeah. So as you're working at the C-suite, what's the, and you talked about efficiency being like one of the top topics. Getting more with less or more with the same, actually. What other topics are executives coming to you with? What kind of problems are they coming with you to solve today? And maybe how's that different than it was a few years ago?
Today, more than ever, we call it the T word. Transformation is the new buzzword du jour. We joked at the beginning about buzzword bingo for consultants, right? But transformation is the buzzword du jour. And what's different today is that CEOs in particular are wanting to transform the entire company at once. So I think many of us in the IT world are familiar with, well, we used to do finance transformation. And along with that, we would implement SAP, Oracle, JD Edwards, whatever it was back in the day. Or we would do sales transformation and we would update with Salesforce or Microsoft Dynamics or whatever the solution was. We'd put that in and we transform that function. Now clients are saying, look, I don't want to do function by function, department by department. I want to transform the entire way that we work. I want us to become a technology first company. I want us to become a digital company. I want to sell digital products. You look at some of these companies that used to sell nothing but physical goods, and now they sell outcomes. One of the most famous ones is John Deere, right? Who used to sell tractors, and now they sell farming outcomes to clients, right? And they have a comprehensive set of solutions around agriculture, seed management, and water management, and all of the things that go with it, right? And they created a whole new series of products out of that. That requires a corporate-wide transformation, but it also requires technology to play a role in supporting all of that as well. So we call it TER, Total Enterprise Reinvention, where CEOs are saying, I want to tackle everything at once. I want to reinvent the entire way my company works. And then they look to the CDO, CIO, CTO, whomever they might be, and say, how are you going to enable that? What is your role? It requires a new enterprise architecture. It requires a nimble architecture to be able to, with microservices and things like that, to be able to be nimble and adjustable. And it requires them to be on top of their game with the business. So IT and business have never had to be more closely together when you're doing through those transformations. So that's what the majority of our, Global 2000 clients are talking about today is total enterprise reinvention.
It's interesting. So would you say there's a shift? I mean, has it always been transformation based on that scale, or has it been more incremental in the past?
It's been more incremental. I mean, even a finance transformation or a sales transformation wasn't really that dramatic. Maybe the software capabilities you were implementing were a step function better than they were before, but it was a lot of, process changes and procedural changes and, op model work and things like that was happening inside of a function. Now it's dramatically different. And some of that is through new technology. I mean, we have DevSecOps, we have DevSecFinOps, right? Where you have developers, security folks, operations people, and finance people all on the same team. And when you're building a solution, the finance people are going, what? How much is that going to cost? The operations people are going to go, can we maintain that? The security people are saying, is that secure? And the developers are saying, is that the most optimal code set I can build and write for that, right? So having all four of those constituents, as an example, be on the same team and collaborating is a new model for working. And it allows you to be able to do some great things in terms of transforming functions that maybe were siloed or very operationally stagnant before.
What do you think, again, as you're working with the C-suite, what do you think's driving them to this, really a revolution in thought, right? Again, we always, when we're kids, we're always told to dream big, right? And sometimes that's just working in a collared shirt, right? But for others, I mean, when they think big, they think about being president of the United States, right? So again, what do you think's driving these CEOs and these C-suite executives to think in this much bigger way?
I think it's a combination of a lot of companies feeling emboldened by what their organizations did during lockdown and during COVID, where they saw their organizations perform in a way that they never thought they could, both in terms of speed and agility. And so it emboldened them to be able to tackle bigger things. And then I think you have an economic situation now where nobody will be punished in the market for tackling something new because everyone's down, right? And so, it's kind of like the old adage, there's nowhere to go but up. And so CEOs are looking at this and saying, okay, I see others starting to transform their business. I'm going to do it. And I don't have to worry about this lofty share price that I'm hanging on to right now. Maybe the shares are down now. And so now's the time to do it, right? I saw how nimble we could be during COVID. I was impressed. I know it's in us. And the market will accept the fact that maybe I now want to embark on an 18-month transformation. In fact, actually, the market expects it, right? Because they're looking for you to come up with the next generation of what it is you're going to do as a business. And so I think everyone is now believing that now's the time to do it. So that's why you're seeing, I mean, you can't miss an earnings announcement and not see the word transformation in an earnings announcement from a company these days in some way, shape, or form.
Is there a factor there too? Because you look at, again, it's a global economy, it's global competition, and companies that don't disrupt themselves are more likely now to be disrupted, right? And do you think there's a fear that drives some of these people to, in the sense that, again, the best way to survive is to disrupt and change rather than just, try to coast along and maximize, just maximize the way it was yesterday?
Yeah, there are certainly some industries where true disruption is a concern. I think the bigger fear these days is kind of just being left behind, and that you become the laggard in your industry. And so we don't see as many industries that are looking for pure raw disruption. We're looking for industries where companies are trying to transform the things they're doing. The energy industry is the classic one, right? How do I continue to be relevant in dinosaur juice, but at the same time become more relevant in renewables and electric vehicle support and things like that, right? And how do I balance that out? Are they going to get disrupted per se? No one thinks oil and gas companies are going to be disrupted tomorrow, Shell, Exxon, Chevron, etc. But it's more of, how do I transform? How do I move into that world so I don't want to be the one left behind, right? And so that's more of the conversation, Jeff, is more about not wanting to be left behind than worrying about an upstart that's going to come and move their cheese, so to speak.
Well, then is it fair to say too that change is now a given in every organization? Because companies used to pride themselves on their consecutive quarters of consistency, and do you think change is now not a bad word in basically any company?
Yeah, change is a good word now, right?
Okay. It's not to be feared, right? It's something to be embraced.
Exactly. And again, back to your audience for this webinar, right? Understanding the broader business context of what your client is trying to do with their business and the change they are trying to undertake, and how what you do fits into that in an efficient way, right? And understanding the broader implications of what you're trying to sell them is absolutely a mission critical sales objective these days. And I don't care whether they're selling to a 50-person company or a 50,000 person company. Those things you and I have talked about on this webinar are directly applicable. That is the buyer value of today.
Yeah, I mean, we're getting close to wrapping it up here, but it really seems like what you said earlier is fundamentally the basis of everything, which is be that second smartest person in the room, because you won't find those opportunities for transformation. You won't find those opportunities for change if you don't listen and then take your skills to give them options for better outcomes, right? Is that?
Yep.
At the end of the day, I assume all the success, it's, the old adage in real estate, you make your money when you buy the property, right? And I tend to think in this consulting phase, you make all your money when you do the listening, right? Because that's where you find really what the possibilities are, is in that first phase, and having the time to listen and having those conversations is just so critical.
Right.
So again, is there anything else? Again, we've covered we've talked about how you build your teams, the people you talk to, the types of projects you're doing, the changes. Oh, one last thing to cover before we get off, if I can indulge a couple more minutes, is artificial intelligence, and where you see that playing out in your clients. And is this just another technology that you're going to layer in, or is this something truly revolutionary from your client's perspective?
It's somewhere in between, I believe. Craig's personal views, it's somewhere in between. Certainly the hype cycle, I mean, we couldn't be higher up the hype cycle right now if we tried. Right. And there is a lot of room to grow there. I mean, most people, I think, realize and recognize that the training models for today's sexiest generative AI tools are all 2021 and earlier. Right. So, you try to ask one of the tools today about something that's happened in the last 15 months, you're not going to get an answer, right? Or the answer that you want or expect.
Right.
So there's a lot to do on model training. There's a lot to do on the data that accesses it to become relevant. There's a lot to do on how to write prompts and correctly write prompts. So I see the thing of today being an enabler to our business, In some ways, not to be too trite, but you could equate this back to the days of having spell check and things like that in Microsoft Word, right? You know, remember we used to have a separate program called spell check, right? And you'd run your document through it, and then all of a sudden it just became integrated, and it was just part of the flow. I think you're going to start to see those tools become integrated into the flow of things that we do. They'll be less visible. Yes, we'll continue to use them as data mining and data algorithms. But I tell you, the most important part of all this, Jeff, is the data underlying it. If I was telling some person who's getting ready to go into college these days that what you should do, you should go be a data architect, right? And a data engineer, because the massive trove of data that these companies are sitting on, even today, they don't have their arms around it, right? And yes, the Snowflakes and the Databricks and those companies of the world are trying to help companies get their arms around this massive trove of data and get it structured and organized the way that it can be utilized. But there's still a lot of work to be done there. So I think that, yes, it'll be continue to be a big part of what people use it for. I also think what has been under discussed is a lot of automation. You know, for a while, that was the sexy thing, right? Robotics and automation were going to eliminate jobs, and we kind of stopped talking about that. That's actually really happening a lot, right? In terms of automating repetitive tasks. So, you know, the companies out there that provide that type of software and capabilities, that is still a very, very hot space in terms of helping clients, again, be more efficient, right? How can I help a worker or a set of workers or my workforce be more efficient? Automating repetitive tasks and having predictable outcomes from those repetitive tasks is a really valuable thing to do. So AI is certainly a hot topic today. We'll continue to work on it, but there's a lot of work between the here and the there to get to where people are talking about.
So at the end of the day, AI, the more you understand it, the more you can use it to deliver the outcomes that the client's asking. And again, they typically haven't cared whether it's coded in COBOL or C# or anything else, as long as it delivers the right outcomes. Right. And if there's a component of AI in there, that's great too, right? Well, Greg, I sure appreciate your time today. I really appreciate you spending time talking to me and talking to the MSP world out there. And look forward to maybe doing this again someday, because again, your insights, wouldn't mind touching base a while later and see if anything's changed in the space. But again, thanks so much for your time today, and look forward to continue the conversation maybe at a later date. Take care.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Bye-bye.
Bye.